All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all going to enjoy the ramen. A little bit different this time, so I hope it's really nice. And so today we're coming into the last week of BuildStation. Appreciate all being able to come and join us here. I got the honor of being able to be having Nico, founder of Reflex Money, be able to come and join us here. Tell us all about his journey, his story. Really cool product that's been built out. They were grand champions in the Coliseum, and they've had A16Z lead their round. So lots of cool experience for you guys to learn from. We'll have a little general conversation, and then you guys get a chance to do Q&A. So be thinking about the key questions that you would want to ask, feedback that you're looking for, and then we can dive into all of that. Sound all good?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. So, Nico, for anyone who hasn't heard of you before, just want to explain a little bit about yourself and a bit about your story.
Okay, so I guess you guys already have my name. I'm Nico, of course, founder of Reflect Money, but I've been a contributor to many different protocols in the past. And today, obviously, I'm a founder, and this is what you guys are hoping to reach as well. The good part is, and I'll start on a relatable note, I started exactly where you guys are in my Solana journey around 4 years ago. In the different hackathons, the hacker houses that Solana originally used to run globally. I used to travel and chase the hackathons. And every time was a bit of a different idea. And every time it was just getting closer to what am I good at that is different than other people that are also trying to capture this opportunity that's this market. And obviously, doing this and traveling these different hackathons, I got to meet people that were very like-minded to me, but also counterbalanced me really well. And that helps the initial journey of a startup, which is pivot central. So I'll start by saying the story of Reflect starts with basically a mess of pivots. If you guys have seen the line, entrepreneurship is not a straight line of having an idea and getting to the finish point, but actually what it is just you bouncing back and forth a wall like a ping pong ball, and that gets tighter and tighter and tighter until you end up on the needle. And what we discovered is because we have such a long experience in DeFi, in auditing, in economic strategy, that we would actually bring economically efficient stablecoins to Solana. That was actually our sixth pivot. So if any of you are on pivots right now, don't worry. Pivots are actually a really, really good thing, and they multiply your experience in this industry. So why stablecoins? Why did I settle on stablecoins? This is a question you guys will be asking yourself today also, is what industry within, whether it's blockchain, whether it's, social finance, whether it's all different types of applications, you want to tell yourself why exactly it is you're building in that. And for us, stablecoins felt like the most obvious step for general users, both in disparaged areas like Southern America and lower equator countries, but also just in the day-to-day experience of myself and others. I've been living my life generally for the last 8-9 years entirely just off crypto. And that was kind of what my expertise were in. So we decided to start up, obviously great adverts here.
Lucky Doritos.
Yeah, so we put together this team that was uniquely good at security, you're uniquely good at economic strategy. And as I said, after all these pivots, we kind of realized what we're best at is what we should do. Even though there's other teams doing it, don't be disparaged. So that kind of starts out Reflect. We entered Coliseum, and the funny story is kind of my co-founder Vincent said to me, there's almost 2,000 teams, but there's no chance of us winning. And what I made sure to instill in my team and what to make sure you're unique in Coliseum, which is really important, is what is the business point of what you're building? And then bringing back to what I talked about earlier, what is the pivots or unique experience that makes you, well set up for this exact industry? And then bringing that across, rather than just building the MVP in a product like a typical hackathon, you want to really think about the encompassing idea and the long tail. What are you bringing immediately, and what does that scale into? And as I said, this all comes from where you guys are at now, which would be hackathons and Pivot Central. So be proud of where you're at right now, because it can one day spur into something like Reflect. There you go.
Awesome. And I think it was a really good analogy you're pointing there of it's not just a straight line. It's actually like bouncing a ball off a wall and getting tighter and tighter and tighter until you hit that very pin. Mm-hmm. when do you know you're at that point? You talk about like these 6 pivots. Like, how did you know the 6th pivot was the one to be able to double down on?
For us, it was we'd been building a long time in payments, privacy, even NFT infrastructure at one point. And within like 3 to 6 months of us building in those areas, there was nothing specifically we were doing that was accelerated versus anyone else or uniquely better than anyone else. We actually just started to dabble a bit in stable coins, and some of the tech we managed to build was X times better than what existed today. And we built it in a short time. And that kind of told us that there's something here, keep exploring it. And what we actually discovered is our team is very, very good at building a DeFi strategy that it can be, neutral in value. So I think, over these pivots, something will come more natural. You'll know more about it. You'll just feel more comfortable. And I guess more excited. Like, because as you go through these pivots, you get a bit like, drained a bit of like idea hunting, going through the idea. But then there will be a point where all of this experience will culminate into a point where you're so comfortable and so excited about that one thing that you've come to that the idea of pivoting kind of goes away, basically.
That's a nice way to position it, where it's thinking about what is your team special in, and when you've been able to figure out those pivots, the way that your team has been able to ship it in a short period of time, but it has like an exponential bigger difference on what's currently in the market as like an indicator of what, that's your specialism. Because we always talk about the idea of like your unfair advantage and your founder market fit. And that's a nice way to kind of like reframe it and think about it, is what can you ship fast that's better than everybody else?
Yeah, essentially. And that doesn't mean obviously shipping like to mainnet. Like we've only just, like today, we're actually launching to mainnet and Solana. But actually it means kind of you build out, you prove the concept. Maybe you show it to a hacker house. Maybe you show it to a hackathon like Coliseum, and you get people to push back on the concept. Why wouldn't it work? Why does the big thing that exists today stomp this out? And eventually what you'll find is something unique that you do, other people aren't providing it like you're, proposing to provide it. That gives you a unique edge. And then my advice then is grab that and just run, right? Basically.
And you talk about just going to mainnet today, which is awesome. Yeah. It's a special big moment. Yeah, big round of applause.
Thank you.
And so what was then that like journey getting to this point? Because you've already gone through fundraisers, you've already gone through the big old journey. When you talk about right now, this idea of like pivoting, figuring out that initial gap, where do you then like start to take it to, to start building up to this point? And from the initial product, what stage do you take it? So it's like, oh, this is enough where we can like fundraise off of this. And then where do you then like find that the next point where it's like, oh, now it's like be doubling down to get it to mainnet?
Yeah, I think it's different depending on what you're doing. If you're doing something that's like inherently social and you can get people excited about what you're doing, then already I think you should be open to having conversations with people who are willing to help you accelerate. Not always do you have to take fundraising, but you should be aware that speed in market is very good, as we just discussed. For us, obviously, we have a new tech, an innovative way of ensuring stablecoins and other things that we can get into later. And so for us, it was about security, legal, getting full reviews, and just making sure that the people that are with us want to make sure that we're launching a product that's ready for the regulatory landscape of stablecoins today. Obviously, that's a bit different than a lot of other type of products. But if you're building in DeFi, there's a similarity around that. There's the gray area if you're fully permissionless, and it's good to have legal opinion on that. They call it the Pareto effect. 80% of your building is very quick, and then 20%, the last 20% will take the longest time. But my advice to you is try to get out what you have at 80%. For us, we did a closed alpha, just 100 people. They ended up building up the TVL to over 2 million in that private alpha. The product worked really well. And we refused to scale it out before that last 20% was built. But then if you're doing something different where you've built the 80%, users are very excited about it, maybe it's very social, that excitement is your product for now. And I think taking that, driving that, building it up, even if you have something simple, right? Like if we look at the earliest form of what Pump Fund was, it was like a very primitive looking application. They just made it really, really simple and exciting to use. continued to capture that excitement. And obviously you see where they are today. It's not as if Pump Fund really waited until they got like, there's some things you build and ask for forgiveness. And some things you get permission first, right? Basically.
Awesome. And when you are now like going through, you finished that Colosseum and you're starting that like initial fundraising journey, like from your perspective as like a deep builder in the space, how did you find that process and like just your raw thoughts on what it was like being able to take on funding, work with investors, fill out a round and go through that typical journey that a lot of the founders here today will start going through soon?
Fundraising. Fundraising is an interesting one because at first, what you think you're looking for is capital. And what you quickly discover is what you're looking for is a unique partner that actually has a thesis in the area you're in. A lot of people chase names, and that's not something we really did. We kind of just took our time. We never rushed it. We felt that getting the right partners who actually believe that what we're doing is the counter thesis to what the market thinks, and kind of chose our partners based on that. A few key points I would say is don't chase big names, chase good partners. See what their thesis is. Go into fundraising calls asking them, why is it they even took this call? What is their thesis in this space? I.e., if it's social-fi, why do you think people are going to, in the next 10 years, bring finance towards social? Or if you're in DeFi, why does the investor think that DeFi genuinely has a shot over Vanguard and all these other sort of major incumbent companies? Get their thesis and you'll kind of see, like if they fumble their words, there's not really a lot of confidence there. But in our case, we found that, going through lists of investors, there was a few there that really just locked in with us, really accepted the vision that we had. And sort of, it wasn't really much so about capital. We were happy to take sort of any amount from them, from smallest to the biggest they could take. And I would say, just don't stress about it. It is very stressful. Take your time and go for partners rather than capital, right? It's easy to fall into the trap of sort of over raising at the start, but be modest with your valuations. Be realistic, because then the pressure is off your shoulders and you can execute in like a realistic fashion, right? It's easy today to see $300 million seed rounds and think, I've got to get an idea that pulls a $300 million seed round. You don't at all. And some of the biggest companies in crypto today started with the smallest raises in the industry, i.e. Aave, etc. Right? So.
I think that's a really nice way to frame it. Is like you're wanting the partners, not the capital. And from your perspective, being able to take your time meant that you was able to focus on having the product that people actually wanted, and then you were in demand. So the investors were looking towards you and almost like fighting to get on that cap table because you were being quite selective on the partners that you would bring on, not just the investors.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing about Colosseum is, Mari and the guys from Colosseum, if they've chosen you, they really do believe in you, and they will put you in front of the right people with the sort of right sort of thesis. And it makes it easier, of course. Like we were fundraising even before Colosseum, and obviously that choice whether you want to join the Colosseum Accelerator or not. We were weighing this up. But ultimately, what they portrayed to us was like they would be our best partner. Yeah. And that's kind of how we've seen it. And, there's people in our industry as well that are big believers in the smallest of teams with the most innovative ideas. Like one I can name who's a big supporter of us is Brian, Sol Big Brain, and Big Brain Ventures. He was an angel with us for 2 years. We were, as I said, this hackathon team pivoting and pivoting and pivoting. And Brian just said, we know that you guys will get it. You'll figure it out. And that's how important a good partner is, right? So I would say really do focus on it.
And where is that then taking you here today? With everything you've been able to be building, you talk about going to mainnet right now. Do you also want to tell everyone just a little bit about what Reflex Money does and where you kind of start to see the progression forward and almost like your thesis for where you see the industry moving forward? Because I remember when we were at Startup Village, we had a really cool conversation. I loved your idea around everyone's going to have their own bank account, but banks won't compete for holding money. They're going to compete for giving you access to it. So everyone's going to hold up their own wallet. and that's like a different mentality around it. But so where do you see Reflect money fitting today, and how you feel like fitting into like your thesis for the future?
Yeah, I guess a brief overview of Reflect is if stablecoins are to win in finance, then corporate centralized issuers are not the end goal here, right? If we look at the world today, it's already a lack of trust in the banking system. I doubt that we're going to have Coca-Cola USD as a primary form of money for even the Coca-Cola superfan, right? And so our kind of thesis is against what we're seeing today. So you have like Tether dollar, Circle dollar, PayPal dollar, and we just think a world where all these different mixed dollars and different custodial holders is not going to be the end state of where stablecoins integrate into our lives. We think that you're just going to see a balance in your account, and they're going to use the most efficient payment system, which will be stablecoins, right? And then you kind of have a choice right now, as the industry makes its decision, who is going to benefit from this technical upgrade. So today, Circle and Tether print enormous profits with minimal employees based on their stablecoins, and a bank does the same. It's called intermediation. You give them your funds, they use your funds, you can still use your funds, right? That's kind of how the economy goes around. This doesn't exist in blockchain today. So, for example, there's no stablecoin that automatically is being used to enhance the capital efficiency of blockchain. So we have treasury bills, we have off-chain backed stablecoins, and this helps the off-chain economy with big incumbents already. And their bet is basically that they can capture our industry by backdooring themselves via the stablecoin way. Reflect is an antithesis bet to this. It's a bet that all of their stablecoins won't matter, and what will matter is how efficient is the on-chain economy. And so what you can do is just wrap, just like a bank would, all of these standard positions, things like lending, things like treasury bills, things like DeFi and delta neutral strategies, etc. And you can wrap them into essentially stable coins that have all these assets underneath. So we don't need to deal with like branded stable coins anymore. In fact, anyone can wrap a Reflect stable coin and it's all the same underneath. And so what we're aiming to do is solve that problem as infrastructure. What does that mean in practicality for you guys, right? It means rather than having to trust Circle or Tether with the stable coins that you might be building on in your application, and then Circle making the money off your hard work of getting 1 million users for your hopefully, your amazing applications, you would benefit directly. You would be able to take the intermediation, the yield from these stable coins, and perhaps give them to users, perhaps keep them and subsidize fees in your application, etc. We enable new business models and perhaps even new neobanking methods. As Cap talked about, with Reflect, you could have a neobank launched by everyone in this room, and we could log into everyone's app, and your account would all be there because it's all a universal interface. This is kind of what Reflect is. It's a big vision, a grand vision. Obviously, as I said, it links into your fundraising process. It's really finding the people that say, yeah, you could probably take on the entire world's financial market, right? And whatever it may be that you're doing. So that's the gist of Reflect. It's basically permissionless yield-bearing stablecoins.
And where do you find yourself today? And where do you want to go to in this next year?
Yeah, today you guys might have noticed on social media, if you're active on crypto Twitter, a lot of projects, a lot of different companies are trying to launch their own stablecoin as soon as possible. Amazing business model, as we said, with Tether, and this sort of space, we're calling it white label stablecoins, is really, really big. We're seeing big centralized issuers trying to get more of that market. What we're actually seeing is big parties who we wouldn't expect, with hundreds of millions, sometimes billions in TVL, coming to us after already speaking to major issuers and telling us that our offering is better for them in that they might be already fully on chain. So adding custody to their business setup would require a lot of legal work, a lot of fees, or they might need insurance, or they might need to know exactly what's under the stablecoin in real time. Like a lot of debit cards and credit cards that you're seeing in crypto, we have a lot of conversations with them because the problem is if they use something like an Athena or an M0 or Cap Money, which are kind of like white label stablecoin companies now, they're not able to model the risk in real time. These are companies with humans doing the risk strategy underneath. And so as a debit card or credit card issuer, you're not able to say, okay, well, we have this much liquid funds at this time, or we have this much insurance, or the yield rate is this in this moment. So we've found that we're doing really well in these conversations, and actually we're excited to already have locked in quite a large amount of partnerships that we're hoping to launch soon after mainnet.
Awesome. And in that, like figuring out how to be bringing in these deals, speaking to people, how have you found that? Is it something where you guys have been going out, or have you focused on like building the magnet and people have been coming to you?
We were a completely technical team. I guess this is good advice for teams that are just programmers. We didn't really see at first, like, because we were just building a deeply infrastructure level tech, didn't see a lot of value in bringing in people that just focus on executing and that really believe in the vision. But we actually made the leap during Colosseum. The Colosseum guys gave us some advice to bring someone in on your team who just fully believes in the vision and wants to talk to as many people as they can about it. And this person will quickly become to you your most valuable player, basically. And so this is kind of how it's been for us. We've brought on Leonardo. You might have known him from other super teams, different projects as well. He does a lot of work with Blue Shift. And so he's done great work in doing a lot of outbound. But really, it's just going to people and telling them why you're better than what the decisions they're about to make, right? Like we would just reach out to projects and say, hey, you're going to issue a stablecoin with these guys. It's going to cost you millions a year. Like you're going to make millions a year if you use us, right? And so they're very, very interested. And even, you know, like, don't be afraid to be ruthless if you know your product is really good. Like, you know, a recent story is like Jupiter launching a stablecoin with Athena. And I immediately kind of put this tweet and it went viral, and I said, Jupiter chooses like the worst issuer for their stablecoin, and it kind of went viral. And the idea being that they were using like a black box and it's like kind of custodial and all of this thing. And having, you know, the team reach out to me after and us just debating in the DM and, you know, them coming to realize and say, hey, we can always move it later. They were like, you know, and so it's honestly just showing that, you know, you're aggressive, but like honest and like a neutral person, that you just want to actually ship a better product for people. And you know, hey, if the inbound or the outbound doesn't work, then, you know, always invite them to check it out later on, or that, you know, you'll always be around to, you know, build with them if they need a partner in that space. I think that's just what worked for us as well. Like a lot of these credit card, debit card applications we're trying to build with like Bridge or Stripe or these different platforms, and we got to talk to them, and there's just missing things that Stripe or Bridge didn't have. And we were just like, hey, we build it for you. We'll build it for you this weekend, right? We'll have it for you. It'll be our prior focus. And then we locked in those partnerships, and we expect them to do, you know, millions and hopefully tens of millions of dollars in TVL.
Awesome. And I think that's a really good way to like link back to the start as well. When you talk about those pivots and finding to that point to get to the pin, it then becomes easy to have that conviction behind your product and to be able to kind of bring people into it, because you can just be publicly being able to say like, we are that like big X difference better than the competitors at the moment. And we will be able to save you this money, earn you this money. And that just allows you to switch from, I'm not selling you it, I'm educating you on how you can be able to do things better. Yeah. And you found that through all the pivots to get to the now at the point. And just next growth.
One of those big examples as well is Aave. I think everyone's heard of Aave, maybe in this room. Aave's whole thing was like, they just did the slow grind, right? They were ETH lend, they had barely any TVL, you know, and big projects popped up. We saw Celsius, all these huge centralized lending applications. And sort of, I had conversations with Stani, founder of Aave back in the day. And he was just like, hey man, we do risk management really well on chain. And no one does it better than us. And eventually everyone will come to figure out that that's what you need. And so we're just going to stick at it and, hey, just use Aave. And like now you see you can literally take $1 billion loans on Aave today. And that happened literally just through slow grinding and showing people that, hey, we are better. We are here. You know, our product is good. And then, you know, you keep shipping. And you know, eventually you'll get the recognition if the product does work and it's good.
Awesome. I love that. And so it'll be a good chance to open up to any questions. So who would like to go first?
Cheers. So you've got this like counter thesis. We work a lot with stablecoins as well, and I've noticed that there's a lot of dollar stablecoins. Like 98% of the liquidity is dollars. So I was wondering if you also had a counter thesis there.
Yeah, that's interesting because we actually looked at like demand for US dollars at the like retail level, and we actually found that like in a lot of non-US places at the people level, demand for dollars is very small. But then you look at like Forex and global lending, and demand for dollars is very big. And so you can see why there's a large institutional focus around dollar stablecoins and tokenizing the debt. Because in like the dollar trade in the economy, it's mostly like debt and lending, and everything is dollarized. And I think there is going to be more individual usage of non-dollar stablecoins, i.e. Local South American currencies, potentially Chinese and Arabic and halal currencies, I think are a very, very interesting workspace. And I think at the usage level, like that thesis is already being proven out in places like South America, where we're seeing like the highest level of usage for like stablecoins anywhere. And like some of them are even in like real pegged versions, right? So I think for sure, when it comes to like actual usage, probably on the per individual level, the dollar will not be the dominant stablecoin. But when it comes to like global finance, I think it's already dollarized, and it's just a token to replace the balances, basically.
So are you building in an agnostic way to the fiat or like the underlying currency?
Yeah, we kind of know that like there's not going to be like a separation. Is that what you mean? Like a different reserve currency is what you're saying, or
just like is it being built with dollars in mind, or is it agnostic to the currency that?
Currently, because of the heavy dollarization of blockchain, we're very, very dollar focused. However, we have systems that allow you to create things like pegged currencies. So like Arab Emirates dirham, we can produce these because they're pegged. Also a Hong Kong dollar is US dollar pegged at the government level, right? And these are things that we can also easily issue with zero Forex fee. I think the problem comes where there's not enough like issuers or markets whereby you can create a neutral form of like a JPY or like a alternative currency. But like personally, I do feel that Forex is going to be bigger on chain than it ever was off chain.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sure you guys have got questions about anything. Literally, it doesn't have to be DeFi, stablecoins.
Hi there. My question comes back to your point around partnership structure and getting the right thesis. What other factors do you think are important when you're talking to VCs and other, angels and that in getting right?
I think for us is the pitch needs to be defendable, because I think what happens a lot, and haven't seen a lot of pitches since, is sometimes you'll get into a call with a VC that's willing to push back. And I think those are really, really good moments, and just know that's like a good opportunity for you. And then if you're able to defend the thesis and you leave them kind of like, actually, this is like a really good power move for you. And so don't just think about your pitch, but think about the defensibility of your pitch, right? And for us, it was like, we can do claims way faster than Athena can and things like that. And just having the stats and the ability to show them and defend it, not even in the deck, but just at hand, we were just able to be defensible. I think also like confidence is a big one. They're not really investing in ideas, right? I think that's the biggest thing I learned in 4 years of pitching to VCs and like finally managing to close, is like everyone in the world can have an idea at some point, right? Maybe like, even the dullest of us can have an amazing idea at some point. But I think what they're looking for is like operators, and like, why you, right? Like not like your qualifications or like this sort of thing. I think this matters so little in today's world.
Maybe your credentials.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what have you done? What's your credentials, right? Like, whether that's like building a lot of things on your own and testing out, getting 1 or 2 customers on a SaaS when you were younger. What are the lessons you had from that? What makes you unique now from that? I think it's just like having the confidence on that as well, because they want to know that once they've invested in you, you're going to be confident with their investment. Like, you know, you might go on to do a Series A. They want to know you're not going to roll over in those next calls, right? It's like something you have to also think about. Like once you've got your money, the journey's not done there, right? And they want to know that you're going to be with them a strong anchor point for that, you know, entire journey. And you'll see it reflected in some of these contracts. For example, like cliffs in the board of directors are pretty much standard for Delaware companies, for example.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. Great talk, actually. There was no presentation, but a great talk. On your website, it says that you can launch a stablecoin within 60 seconds. It's kind of pump fun, almost marketing for stablecoins. How are you able to, or can you talk us through like the technicalities when it comes to actually providing the liquidity for an individual which essentially launches their own stablecoin, and how are you able to back that and peg it one-to-one so that it's safe and secure?
Yeah, so think of Reflect as kind of just a house that makes strategies. These strategies might be like a delta neutral or treasury bills or something simple like lending across blue chip money markets. And because we've built the strategy, it means that you don't have to. And it also means you don't have to go to a company who's just managing those strategies, right? And so you can say, okay, well, we only want US debt to back our stablecoins, like a lot of the biggest ones. And so we have a system that distributes amongst issuers, and they say, hey, they want, you know, 50,000 of user deposits in this stablecoin, and we could issue that to you instantly, whatever strategy you do. That's because we're entirely on chain with everything we do. How do we back it with liquidity? So Reflect stablecoins are unique. They don't need liquidity pools. So if you wanted to swap a Reflect stablecoin, you can just unwrap it immediately for the underlying, and then have that swapped on any liquidity venue across all of Solana. Whereas typically, if you issued your stablecoin using like M0 or Athena, right, you'd have to make your own liquidity pools. You'd have to go out there and get a market maker that would be able to, you know, give you enough USDC, perhaps 10 million one side, 10 million the other side, for people to use it. You maybe have to go incentivize people with yield. And so that's kind of the problem we're solving. Because everything's collateralized on chain, maybe your users are using Apple Pay to get balance in your application. Under the hood, maybe you're using Sphere to get USDC, and then Reflect to issue your app USD, right? And so what's actually happening there under the hood is everything is on the chain in one transaction. And so you can not only launch instantly a stablecoin, but know that it has a strategy that's safe, that's insured, and has a long history in all of the stablecoins and that are backed by it, right? And so that's why we're able to do it in 60 seconds versus, you know, a company which might take a long time because they have to do legal contracts and things like that. With Reflect, you don't take on any custody. So if you're an application that only uses wallets or abstracted accounts like a Privy or something like this, you don't have to take on custody of users' deposits, which is what you would have to do if you were using like Phantom's Cash or something like that. There would be a company that was taking custody, because then you're creating custodied stablecoins. You'd need to sign up as a money transmitter or something like that. Whereas with Reflect, everything's non-custodial and self-issued by the user under the hood. And so there you don't need to have, you know, a MiCA registration. You don't need to have a money transmitter license or be Genius compliant, for example, because you can trust that under the hood, everything is sort of done for you.
Awesome, thank you.
No problem.
Hey.
Hi.
When you have an antithesis to the current state of play, like how do you go into conversations around that? And is it just sheer confidence, like you mentioned earlier?
Part of it is really just kind of making them feel correct, but slightly off the bend, right? Like as if they were following the yellow brick road, but slightly veered off by a trend. That's kind of how you have to make them feel. So obviously, we know that stablecoin technology is greater than any transfer technology that exists today, especially on networks like Solana, where you can do sub-cent payments. So that's pretty clear. And then, we know that there's a large adoption base right now of stablecoins, and so it's a good market to build in. What we don't know, however, is will retail accept branded stablecoins? We don't have branded money. There's no thesis ever that shows branded money will be okay or acceptable. And in fact, the trend that we have shows that banks with brand or trust equity stand to lose it over time. It's the whole reason why the central bank exists, right? So how we kind of went into those calls were like, you're right on stablecoins. We also think that's right. We think stablecoins are going to be everywhere. In fact, we'll think they're going to be 30 trillion market within X. Obviously, you can bring up your TAM numbers and obviously whatever that may be. But then go into, but here's why Tether and Athena and PayPal and Starbucks USD won't be what we see in the world. Here's what you're right on, and here's where you've maybe misconstrued it with a trend, right? And then just bring them the facts. Like I said, in my case, we don't have branded money, right, anywhere in the world. And so this is a very clear point for them to accept. And it's so clear they can't think to themselves, well, I think someone would use Nike dollar in every day, right? It's like they would sound to themselves quite a bit ridiculous. And so that's what I mean a bit where it's about defensibility. It's like if you have a complete antithesis that says like, oh, the world's going to run on coal, it's like, how defendable is that when we have way more efficient and cheaper to run energy sources, right? Yeah. Whereas if it's defensible, you're also kind of backing their thesis, but just showing them why it might be slightly off. They're more accepting to hear you, right? But also then there's like the counter thing where it's like shock value. Like I usually like to present, like in our demo day 16Z, I said like all stable coins are broken as our first kind of thing. And everyone was then listening because everyone in the room had stablecoin investments and they were like, are our investments done? And so then it's just like, then right after that, I'm like, here's why they're great. Here's why I said they're not so great, right? And so that's how you can get people to warm up.
Last one, question? Awesome. All right. Oh, wait, no, it's wrong. Hello.
Hi. Can I ask you, in terms of like what's next? You've been building in a very like contrarian way, but you don't sound contrarian at all. So kind of quite chill. And what is in the cards for next couple of years for you guys?
Yeah, we want to build. Basically, what we want to get to is a point where anyone can launch a neobank, i.e., Monzo Revolut, in like a few lines of code. And the idea being that it is not possible for the neobank to touch the money. And so we envision a world where basically the only difference between banks are the features they're offering you. And so what you then kind of see is banks that have to get more involved with the human mission because they have to relate to you, right? And so in one area that might be, we do a lot of social good with part of the intermediation money, and we can show you that. Please log into our interface, because with Reflect, if everyone in here launches a neobank, you can log into every single one. Your balance is there. The bank doesn't own that balance, right? They only own the decision of what yield profile you're getting, right? And so we're calling this Mirror Bank, the first open source forkable bank. It's kind of our end term goal where, you can have Monzo Revolut launched in a day. Maybe your features are you're better at tax than anyone else. Maybe your features are you're better for, halal finance than anyone else in the West. And you can just launch these things really quickly. And that's kind of what we envision our next 3 to 4 years looking like.
So how in the world are you not going to be outcompeted by the big guys then? Because you effectively running against, I won't mention the names, but everybody sort of knows the big groups that own 99.9% of the whole thing. So how are you, I guess you're allowing capital with this because you're funded somehow by the same guys at the LP side, or?
Yeah. That tends to typically happen, right? Like, for example, an old film company might invest in digital. That does tend to happen in industry. You might see that like like an old incumbent company like cigarettes invested heavily into e-cigarettes, right? Like Philip Morris, etc., knowing that their next generation of consumer base will likely be using that. And I think it's about just getting the partner that doesn't like cling to the thesis to like that old industry needs to survive is what we saw in like a lot of different types of investors. It's about finding the investor that's like happy to go even against that industry and see it end if your vision comes right. And it doesn't mean like, we have to end entirely like big central banks managing money. It's just about giving more options. And that's already a huge market. People are choosing Revolut, Monzo, all these new app banks for their day-to-day banks because they're easier to use. They offer more features, right? And like that's what we're seeing in behavior. If that continues as a trend and we see the world being more and more polarized around what groups they belong to, what social causes are important to them, what are they boycotting, we're going to see more human relationship banks. In fact, I think if you go on the tube right now, there's adverts for a bank that's telling people that it's their friend. Like it's a bank that's your friend. Like it's getting to that point now. So I think the industry already kind of knows that we're going to see more human cooperative type mission banks. We want to be the infrastructure that runs it, right?
And why do you personally care about social impact so much? You seem to be very like that. It seems to be like the thread throughout the whole thing that you were saying, that you really care about people and sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I think, look, in today's world, I think people are very, very much so like emotionally educated globally and can find a lot of these like groups they can belong to across the span. And we have the chance now to create these global applications that, previously you had these social small banks because everything was about small community and there was no access to, another country. But, then we had globalization, you had access to other countries. That community aspect went away as we were given the access of the whole world, but we didn't really sort of access the benefits of the whole world. There's still the same moral of your area, right? If you come from a hyper-capitalist society, you'll end up with hyper-capitalist banks. If you come from a very, very religious society, you'll come from where their economy is based on the principles of their religion also. And so I think it's a natural human trend, right? There's a few natural human trends in the world, like social gathering, social rules, constructs, collecting, etc. I think that's why I've always felt strong about it, but also like growing up extremely impoverished and being obsessed with money. What is money? Why does it work? Who owns the money? Who's moving the money? Right? And then like you kind of figure out in 2008, they were a bit excited about leverage on mortgages. And, the bank got to make that decision, not you. And so your whole community was affected because of other people's decisions. And so we kind of thought about with stable coins, as they are today, we're not separating corp and money. But if you have permissionless intermediation, you can. And then you can choose a bank that doesn't do lending or doesn't do mortgages or, you know what I mean? And know that your money is secure, or choose a bank that's favorable to you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. I love that. And so just give a huge big round of applause for Nico.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
And I hope everyone's enjoyed the lunch. We'll have our founder roast later today, where you have a chance to be able to get your marketing pitch roasted. So look forward to that at 4:00. Until then, enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.